Panetta.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Wolf, thanks for being here. It almost seems like you're enjoying answering the questions, which I think demonstrates that you're pretty good at your job. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. As you know, we in Congress provided the IRS with historic funding to help close that tax gap, the hundreds of billions of taxes that are owed but not paid. We also provided billions to modernize the IRS and improve customer service, which has already reduced call times, as we talked about today, and helped more taxpayers and professionals settle tax issues. Now, thanks to this funding, the IRS has already collected over $500 million in overdue taxes from delinquent taxpayers. I want to remind all of my colleagues that tax collection isn't a tax hike, it is about enforcing the law. Now, the vast majority of middle-class family constituents with W-2s and simple incomes pay what they owe, and so should everybody else at all levels. So thank you, and we're encouraged by the IRS efforts to recoup unpaid taxes and improve taxpayer service. I appreciate your work and your leadership at this point, Mr. Commissioner. When I narrow down my line of questioning to paid preparer regulations, Susan Delbene already hit on this, but let me delve a little bit more into it. The IRS Taxpayer Advocate's Purple Book, which I'm sure you're aware of, has stated that over half of all returns are done by paid preparers who don't have any credentials to do so. I have a bipartisan bill, the Taxpayer Protection and Paid Preparer Proficiency Act, try saying that fast, would ensure that paid preparers meet minimum competency standards. It would exempt credentialed professionals like CPAs and enrolled agents or preparers that meet minimum standards from state education councils from any new standards. It's sort of that's the focus of the bill, is on the worst actors, as you know. While I know that the IRS would ideally be given full legal authority to regulate all preparers, would you support a compromise that mandated minimum competency standards targeted at those with no credentials at all?
Yeah, I don't have the authority sitting up here to support a particular legislative provision. I have to get with my Treasury colleagues to do that. As a general principle,
please,
we lack authorities today to hold preparers accountable, whether it's credentialing, whether it's when they harm taxpayers. And the president's budget each year has included an array of different legislative changes that would enhance our ability to crack down on nefarious actors that are doing these things, or to improve the overall quality of taxpayer service that people get from private tax professionals. So yes, we would love to work with you on the right set of legislation.
I appreciate that. Thank you. One of the, I'll call it penalties, I guess, as a former prosecutor, I can say this. One of the penalties I think that the IRS should have is the authority to revoke a preparer tax identification number, or PTIN as it's called, when there has been misconduct. However, there's been some due process concerns that have been raised. Do you think I guess you can opine, whether or not the IRS would support a system of due process for preparers who are facing PTIN revocation?
Yeah, there is the legislative proposals that I've mentioned earlier that were in the president's budget last year have new penalties for when there's an appropriation of a PTIN and tackles the issue. Whether that president's budget proposal aligns directly with yours, I'm not sure without getting into the details, but I think it's a great starting point to have that conversation.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to tax credits. Obviously, we in this committee passed legislation that would reduce our carbon output by 40% by 2030. However, some of the credits, including those for microgrids, fuel cells, and linear generators, expire at the end of this year. And unfortunately, we're still waiting for final guidance on those credits. And that's leading to some taxpayers and constituents of mine being reluctant to make investments. Myself and Claudia Tenney, Representative Tenney, have been pushing to extend these new energy credits so that they encourage, not discourage, more clean energy and resilient energy system deployment. So in a blatant effort to garner evidence and support for my bipartisan legislation, does the IRS see greater utilization in tax credits when they have had clear guidance for a longer period of time?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. I yield back.